Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Bridge of Spies. Spielberg prestige films are never really my favorite things, and a lot of his later career output isn't really my favorite either. He's very much entered his older director phase, and he's very much embraced it, not necessarily in ways I like, certainly like War Horse. Bridge of Spies isn't an example of that not working. It's an example of it very much working. Bridge of Spies shows how good Spielberg is at making something that wouldn't normally be that interesting. A court case about a Russian spy who's been taken in and then traded for an American spy who has been taken in Russia could be an interesting movie, certainly, and maybe a nice miniseries or something, but you wouldn't expect it to be thrilling and as audience friendly as Spielberg can present it. Spielberg's always been great with an audience, and this is another fine example of why he is so good with an audience, is that he could take a film like this and not just make it be an interesting kind of Cold War legal drama, but also make it inviting and make you want to know what's going on. It makes me want to read about the real life story of the guy that Tom Hanks plays. And Spielberg does this probably better than a lot of based on real life story films ever do, because it makes me care, but also it shows one of our probably greatest directors of all time understanding how to be an older director late in his career. This is almost a finer example of an older director type of film that actually works. It's not him doing a dream project necessarily, but it's him working with an established star who's very comfortable in his role and knows what he's doing, and as does Spielberg, and it's almost like they're using all their knowledge over these years to make almost a comfortable procedural that's really saying a lot morally in a time that was very morally gray. It makes you kind of believe in the mythos that America was once great and we once had great men, even in times where it didn't look like that was possible. And it actually pulls it off fairly well. I didn't think I would really believe in a film like this, especially in 2015, but Spielberg's so good at it, you actually do. Is it kind of makes you believe more so in a way that it almost sneaks up on you and you're not expecting to be. And I think that really shows you how good of a director Spielberg is he can grab you over an insurance lawyer doing something extraordinary, might seem like a little too run-of-the-mill Hollywood, this guy who you'd never expect doing something truly extraordinary, and he really gives it a lot of weight and almost modesty to it that makes it both relatable but also interesting to watch as an audience, and almost captivating in a way that most people can't get legal dramas to be anymore. The real life story of lawyer James B. Donovan, who was given the job of being the legal defense for Rudolf Abel, who is a Soviet KGB spy who is under the custody of America in 1960. Someone has to defend him during his trial, and he is given that honor or dishonor, but he actually puts a lot of effort into it and examines the law and makes sure he is given a particular legal defense, because as J.B. Donovan feels, he should do what's right rather than what the opinion of the nation was at the time. And he does defend him and really believes in Rudolf Abel, this like calm man who isn't freaking out. He almost feels like he should defend him to the ladder of the law. He also gets him off the death penalty because he feels that one day that Russia will capture one of America's spies and then we will need to trade them, which was a smart move because that literally then actually happened, which isn't a bizarre setup, actually did happen. Probably because he's an insurance lawyer and he's looking at all the various variables that can happen. But once an American spy is caught in Russia, he has to negotiate trading Abel for this American spy who is captive in Russia, and even negotiates to get another American, an American student who's trapped there as well, to hopefully do what's right and get all these political prisoners out of jail and really do what's morally right rather than do what all these countries feel is right at the time. Spielberg has said one of his favorite performances ever was Gregory Peck in To Kill a Mockingbird, and no film he's ever made has probably felt like it was very much influenced by a performance like that than this film, really. And Gregory Peck actually wanted to make a film about this story in the 60s, but they felt it was too controversial at the time, it being the Cold War. And I think it has that kind of honesty to it, that moral, like, I'm going to fight for what's right, and that's something that's always appealed to Spielberg. It's something we don't get enough of in movies anymore. I actually only read 2 reviews of this, one by Devin Faraci at Birth Movies Death and the other by Alison Wilmore at BuzzFeed, and both I agree with, where Devin Faraci talked about how this film should have come out probably 10 years ago, and I think it would have really meant something at a time when people weren't thinking of what was morally right. They were thinking what was right under the certain conditions of the time, and I agree with that. It actually made me feel like people would fight for what was good. People think of groupthink or anything where people think they're doing what's right, but morally you know that's not not what's right, and that someone would fight for that. And I think when you're a kid and you really believe in honest morals and being a good person, Bridge of Spies tapped into that for me better than I've seen any film do in a modern setting. It feels like a classic Hollywood film that Spencer Tracy or Gregory Peck should be in, and it made me a little emotional. Alison Wilmore commented, "It's like your dad's favorite spy movie." And I agree with that, but while I was watching, my dad is a lawyer, and I couldn't write a book about his legal career, but he was a lawyer, and I always thought he was a good man morally, and even his father, my grandfather, as well. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but it made me think about that. It made me think about how they were morally good people and trying to do what was morally right overall, even though I guess, you know, if you're a lawyer, I guess that's not something people think of typically. Maybe I'm just thinking of the image I always thought of my dad. And this is the kind of film I think my dad would like. That was something in Tom Hanks' performance. He's been in movies for so long and throughout my childhood that he looks like someone of my dad's generation. I guess that kind of hit me in a way. It hit me with that honesty and trying to do the right thing. And Donovan did so far and beyond the right thing, despite the fact that everyone was telling him not to. It warmed my heart in a way that the schmaltziness of Hollywood always tries to do, and Spielberg fucking did it. Just because it's an Oscar picture doesn't mean I hate it, because I really don't like most Oscar movies. This is like one of those Oscar movies that like makes me kind of believe in that system can work sometimes. And I know a lot of people aren't going to see this film because it's not sexy, it's not cool, it's not any of those neat things, but it is really compelling and really kind of surprised me. This is the kind of film that when I'd see my dad watching a documentary about lawyers or like someone doing something good, I'd always think like that's the example of what you should really be, to be a man in a certain regard. That's something I love about Bridge of Spies. But also a film that's really compelling, that's funny, and it speaks to how good of a storyteller Spielberg is. This is also written by the Coen brothers. The script was originally written by Matt Charman, but the Coen brothers did a couple passes at it. But unlike last year's Unbroken, this you can tell the Coen brothers wrote. Unbroken, I could not tell the Coen brothers. There wasn't very much Coen-ness in it. But in Bridge of Spies, you can definitely tell the Coen brothers were involved in this. There's a lot of their humor. Spielberg plays it a lot differently. It's interesting because I can't think of another script they've written that hasn't been directed by them. This film is a little odd structure-wise because you have one story and then becomes another. That's certainly how it happened, and you can't really tell half the story. It actually flows very well. I didn't really feel like it was like two movies. Tom Hanks's character of Donovan has such a moral through line through it that you know he had to redeem himself even though he morally had done the right thing. He had to keep morally doing the right thing even though most people thought he was good for doing what he did towards the end of the movie. He was a good man all throughout. It's not so much that he's a man or something like that, but if just that a person did the right thing and it was funny, it was relatable. He didn't feel like he was somebody who was overly self-important. He was still talking to his kids at the end of the day. Spielberg still kind of has it. Maybe for me, having a movie like Lincoln about Lincoln makes you feel like America can do great things and we used to be able to do great things. Well, with Lincoln, that's a little on the nose. I mean, I know everyone wants to put Lincoln up really high, but I actually had a much better time at Bridge of Spies. I really got into Bridge of Spies. It was really enthralling, especially the performance by Tom Hanks, who's an actor who I think he's one of our great movie stars. And this is probably a late career performance, but a late career performance like a late career John Wayne or Jimmy Stewart, where they do a great performance, but you can tell they knew exactly what they were doing and they're so at ease with it. It's not a showy performance. It's the kind of performance where you're like, God damn, I miss Tom Hanks. He was so good in this. Every time I was watching, I was like, why haven't I seen him do a performance like this in too long? He does that kind of performance like you'd see in those movie stars' later careers where they were just like, I can do this well and no one can do it like me. And Tom Hanks had that throughout the film. It's a glory to watch because I don't see a lot of reliable movie stars who can do that in this way. Hanks is so good in this movie. It's the kind of thing that people probably forget about, to be honest, over the course of a year, but it's something that you really shouldn't take for granted. There's a lot of great performances in this. One of the standouts was one of the CIA or FBI agents, Scott Shepard, who's normally a theater actor. If you see the film, you'll know who I'm talking about. He is very, very good. I know he's getting more roles now, but it's justly deserved because it was thrilling to watch this guy. The whole time I was like, who is this guy? He is really good, and all the supporting actors are very good. I like seeing Amy Ryan and Alan Alda. I really recommend Bridge of Spies, and Bridge of Spies is almost like a lot more of a commercial and earnest and honest John le Carre, and straightforward, I guess. Also, a lot of people are going to say this is not going to be on the greatest of Spielberg's list, but if it's going to be the second tier or whatever, I would put it higher up there. It was a lot more fun than Amistad. It definitely showed how good Spielberg is at just taking a topic and making it incredibly interesting. Like, I didn't know who Donovan was, and now I'm like really into him because of this movie. That's one of the things that I found interesting about this, is I've seen so many films that care so much about getting all the stupid dumb details, because if we don't have it, the audience isn't going to know this guy did this one thing or whatever, because then we won't be into him if we didn't know this dumb thing or something. And in this film, while I was watching it, I was thinking, like, you know, now I really care about this guy because I saw this performance of Tom Hanks, because I saw this great story. This is almost like How to Do a based on a real life story, because it's made in such an entertaining way that kind of like gets you in. It just kind of shows you the greatness of Hollywood. And this definitely feels like a 1960, a very Cold War Hollywood kind of legal thriller. And Spielberg would, of course, know how to do that better than anyone. This is kind of one of those films that shows how Spielberg's still one of our greatest living filmmakers, is he can make even someone like me who doesn't normally like these things and really believe in his kind of perspective again. And if that doesn't show fine filmmaking and everything like that, I don't really know what does. I think that's one of the amazing things about Spielberg, is whether it was E.T. or Close Encounters or even Amistad or Schindler's List, he's always gotten you to believe in the goodness of man and to believe in the honesty of man. And Bridge of Spies does that at a time where a lot of people didn't believe in that. But you get that everyone around them is like that, but with the protagonist that Tom Hanks is playing, like Donovan, he makes you kind of believe in that again. And he doesn't do it in the incredible Spielberg way. This doesn't even have John Williams. It's the first non-John Williams Spielberg film since 1985 with The Color Purple. Thomas Newman did the score, did a decent job, but he's not John Williams. The fact that he's reliably gotten you to believe, and that might be hokey and cheesy, but Bridge of Spies shows like why he's so damn good at that, and kind of makes me not just believe in all of this stuff and believe in that we were once good and that we could be good again and that we should do what is morally right, but it also got me to believe in him again after I kind of had been a little apathetic about his last couple of films recently. And frankly, that's kind of one of the best things about embracing it, was just realizing how much fun it was to believe in Spielberg all over again. So if you have seen Bridge of Spies and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.